Triplets didn't know they had a father. I even saw them crying at their mother's grave. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Thomas Reed stood alone among the gravestones, the autumn wind cutting through his expensive coat. 7 years had passed since he'd last seen Emily Grace, yet standing before her marble headstone made it feel like yesterday. He placed white lilies, her favorites, against the cold stone. "I'm sorry I waited so long," he whispered, his breath visible in the crisp air. At 42, Thomas had everything money could buy: a global empire worth billions, properties across continents, and a reputation as one of America's most ruthless businessmen. Yet here, in Oakwood Cemetery, none of that mattered. He was about to leave when he heard it, soft sobbing coming from nearby. Thomas turned to see 3 identical little girls huddled together by Emily's grave. They had dark curls and wore matching blue coats. Something about them stopped him cold. "Are you all right?" he asked, approaching cautiously. The girls looked up with tear-streaked faces. The one in the middle spoke first. "We miss our mommy," she said simply. Thomas felt an inexplicable tightness in his chest. "Did you know Emily?" The tallest girl nodded. "She was our mom." The world tilted beneath Thomas's feet. "Your mom?" he repeated, his voice barely audible. "Ava," said the tallest. "These are my sisters Bella and June. We're 7. 7 years. The math wasn't lost on Thomas. His mind raced back to their last night together, the argument that ended everything. Emily had left the next day without a word. "Who?" He struggled to form the question. "Who is your father?" The quietest girl, June, studied his face curiously. "Mom said he was a businessman who didn't know about us. She kept your picture by her bed." Thomas sank to his knees, eye level with the children, his children. "I'm Thomas," he managed to say. "We know," Ava replied, her small voice suddenly strong. "You're our dad. Aunt Margaret showed us your picture in magazines." A woman approached quickly from the cemetery path. "Girls, I told you not to wander off." She froze when she saw Thomas. "You." "Margaret?" Thomas recognized Emily's sister, though they'd only met once. "What are you doing here?" Her voice was ice. "I came to pay respects." He gestured helplessly toward the girls. "Are they?" "Yes," Margaret cut him off. "They're yours. Emily found out she was pregnant after you two split. She tried to tell you, but you never responded." "I never knew," Thomas whispered, his world crashing down around him. "I never received any messages." The girls watched this exchange with solemn eyes that seemed too wise for their years. "Well, now you know," Margaret said. "Emily passed 3 months ago. Cancer." Thomas stared at the 3 small faces, mirrors of Emily and himself. In an instant, everything changed. "I want to be part of their lives," he said, the word surprising even himself. Margaret laughed bitterly. 7 years too late, don't you think? But Thomas couldn't look away from the girls, his daughters. 3 lives he never knew existed. 3 chances he never thought he'd have. "It's not too late," he said, more to them than to Margaret. "Not if they'll let me try." Thomas sat in his Bentley outside Margaret's modest 2-story home, gathering courage. Since discovering the triplets 3 days ago, he'd barely slept. His investigative team had worked overtime, compiling a detailed report on Emily's life after their separation. The manila folder on his passenger seat contained painful truths. Emily had indeed tried to contact him multiple times during her pregnancy. Letters, calls, even visits to his office, all intercepted by his then-assistant Jessica. Further digging revealed Jessica had been romantically involved with Oliver. Crane, Thomas's former business partner, now pushed out of the company after a bitter dispute. Thomas gripped the steering wheel, rage and grief battling within him. 7 years lost. A family he never knew existed. Finally, he approached the front door, pressing the doorbell with trembling fingers. Margaret opened it, her expression guarded. "What do you want, Thomas?" "I need to talk to you. About the girls. About Emily." She hesitated before stepping aside. "They're at school. We have 20 minutes. The living room was modest but warm, filled with children's drawings, framed photos, and well-worn furniture, a stark contrast to his sterile penthouse. "Emily tried to reach me," Thomas said without preamble. "I never knew about the messages." "Convenient excuse," Margaret replied coldly. "It's the truth." He handed her the investigator's report. "My assistant was working with Oliver Crane to keep me in the dark. I fired her years ago for other reasons, never knowing what she'd done." Margaret skimmed the documents, her expression softening slightly. "Even if that's true, where were you for 7 years? Emily's obituary was in the Times. The girls were mentioned. I was in Tokyo for 3 months when I returned." Thomas swallowed hard. "I avoid anything related to Emily. It hurt too much." For the first time, Margaret truly looked at him, seeing not the billionaire but the man who had loved her sister. "She never stopped loving you," she admitted reluctantly. "Even when she was dying, she told the girls good things about you." Thomas closed his eyes, pain washing over him. How did they survive? Financially? Emily worked 3 jobs. I helped when I could. She refused to touch the trust fund your company provided when employees leave. Pride, Thomas whispered, remembering how fiercely independent Emily had been. "What do you want now, Thomas? You can't just appear and disappear from their lives. I want to know them, be their father, support them in every way." Margaret studied him. "Bella has a heart condition. Medical bills are enormous. Emily exhausted herself working to pay them." This new information hit Thomas like a physical blow. "I'll cover everything," he said immediately. "Whatever they need." "It's not just about money. I know." Thomas met her gaze steadily. "I'm not going anywhere, Margaret. They're my daughters." She sighed, conflict evident in her expression. "They're curious about you, but they've lost so much already. If you hurt them—" "I won't," Thomas promised. The front door burst open and 3 identical whirlwinds rushed in, backpacks bouncing. "Aunt Margaret, we—" Ava froze, spotting Thomas. The other 2 bumped into her. "Girls," Margaret said carefully. Mr. Reed came to talk about arrangements. 3 pairs of identical brown eyes, Emily's eyes, stared up at him. "Hello," Thomas said softly, kneeling to their level. "I was hoping we could get to know each other a little better." June, the quietest, stepped forward. "Did you really not know about us?" Thomas's heart clenched. "No, sweetheart. If I had known, I would have been here every single day." Somewhere across town, Oliver Crane studied photographs of Thomas with 3 little girls, a cold smile spreading across his face. "Well, well," he murmured. "Isn't this interesting?" "Ice cream isn't lunch," Margaret had warned before reluctantly allowing Thomas to take the girls to the park. Now, sitting awkwardly on a bench watching his daughters devour ice cream cones, Thomas realized he had no idea how to be a father. The parenting books he'd stayed up reading last night hadn't prepared him for the reality of 3 7-year-olds studying him like scientists with a curious specimen. "Do you really have a helicopter?" Ava asked, chocolate dripping down her wrist. "I do," Thomas replied, handing her a napkin. "For business trips." "Could we ride in it someday?" Bella's eyes widened, her voice softer than her sister's. "Perhaps, if your aunt approves." June hadn't spoken yet, observing him intently over her strawberry cone. Of the 3, she reminded him most of Emily, thoughtful, watchful. "Your ice cream is melting," she finally noted, pointing to his untouched vanilla. Thomas smiled. "I'm a bit distracted." "Because you're nervous," June stated matter-of-factly. His eyebrows rose. "Am I that obvious?" Ava nodded vigorously. "You keep fidgeting with your watch, and you've barely touched your ice cream." "Mom said you were smart with details," Bella added. "We are too." Thomas felt a pang at the mention of Emily. "What else? Did your mother tell you about me?" The girls exchanged glances, a silent communication he couldn't decipher. She said you were ambitious, Ava answered. And that you liked solving problems, Bella continued. And that you were kind underneath it all, June finished quietly. Thomas struggled to swallow past the lump in his throat. Even after he'd chosen his career over their relationship, Emily had painted him in a generous light for their daughters. Your mother was extraordinary, he managed. Why weren't you there? June asked suddenly, her direct gaze unflinching. When Mom was sick, when she died. The playground sounds faded as Thomas faced the question he'd been dreading. I didn't know, he said gently. I never knew about you girls, or that your mother was ill. If I had. Would you have helped? Bella asked, vulnerability clear in her voice. Without question, Thomas answered firmly. I would have moved mountains to help your mother, to know all of you. Ava studied him skeptically. But you're here now because you feel guilty. Such perception from a 7-year-old was startling. Feel many things, Thomas admitted. Guilt, yes. Sadness for missing so much time. But mostly, I want to know you because you're my daughters. The girls considered this as they finished their ice cream. Thomas noticed how Bella struggled slightly for breath after walking to the trash can, a reminder of her heart condition. Would you like to see the playground? He offered. To his surprise, they agreed. He watched as they navigated the equipment, noting their differences. Ava fearlessly scaling the tallest structures, Bella carefully testing each step, June creating an imaginative game involving the swings. When they returned, flushed and smiling, something had shifted. The invisible wall between them had thinned slightly. Can we do this again? Thomas asked as they walked back toward the car. I guess, Ava said with studied nonchalance that didn't quite hide her interest. Next time, can we have real food first? Bella asked. Aunt Margaret was right about ice cream. Thomas chuckled. Deal. As he helped them into his car, June unexpectedly took his hand. Mom would be happy you found us, she whispered. Thomas gently squeezed her small fingers, hope kindling in his chest. Unknown to them, a telephoto lens captured the moment from a black sedan parked across the street. They certainly look like him, Vanessa Monroe murmured, lowering her camera. Oliver will be pleased. Mr. Reed, the Tokyo investors have been waiting for 15 minutes, his assistant Rachel reminded, poking her head into his office. Thomas barely looked up from the medical reports spread across his desk. Bella's heart condition was more complex than he'd initially understood. Tell them I need another 10 minutes, he replied, making notes about specialists to contact. Rachel hesitated. Sir, this is the third delayed meeting this week. The board is concerned. Thomas finally glanced up, noticing her worried expression. In his 20 years building Reed Enterprises, he'd never prioritized anything above business. Now his employees were witnessing something unprecedented. Let them be concerned, he said, closing the file. I'll be there shortly. After she left, Thomas rubbed his temples. It had been 2 weeks since discovering the triplets, and his carefully structured world was unraveling. Board members whispered about his distraction. Deals languished unsigned. The Tokyo partnership, worth billions, was hanging by a thread. Yet all he could think about was Bella's upcoming cardiology appointment, and whether June's newfound silence at their last meeting meant she was withdrawing from him. His phone buzzed with a text from Margaret. The girl's asking if you're still coming for dinner tomorrow. Thomas smiled, typing back, wouldn't miss it for anything. When he finally entered the conference room, the Japanese investors rose politely, though their expressions betrayed impatience. Gentlemen, my apologies, Thomas began, slipping back into his familiar role. Let's discuss the Tokyo expansion. Halfway through the presentation, his phone vibrated. A photo from Margaret, the girls proudly displaying art projects. His heart twisted at their smiling faces, so similar yet distinct. He wanted to be there, not here. Mr. Reed? Mr. Tanaka, the lead investor, was watching him expectantly. I apologize, you were saying? The meeting salvaged, Thomas returned to his office to find his security chief waiting. You asked for background on Oliver Crane's recent activities, James said, handing him a file. He's been making unusual inquiries about your personal schedule, sir. Thomas frowned. Oliver's departure 3 years ago had been ugly. Accusations of embezzlement met with countercharges of idea theft. The man had sworn revenge. Increase security protocols, Thomas ordered, and add protection for a residence in Brookside. Discreet, but thorough. That evening, Thomas drove himself to Margaret's house, briefcase filled with documents forgotten in the passenger seat. Instead, 3 small gift bags took its place. The girls greeted him at the door, more enthusiastic than previous visits. "You came," Bella exclaimed, tiny hands clasping his larger one. "I promised, didn't I?" Thomas replied, heart warming at her touch. Over a simple dinner of spaghetti, Thomas found himself truly relaxing for the first time in years. Ava proudly described winning her math competition. Bella shyly showed him her artwork, a surprisingly sophisticated landscape. Only June remained subdued. "What about you, June?" Thomas asked gently. "Anything new with you?" She shrugged, pushing pasta around her plate. "Not really." Margaret caught his eye, subtly shaking her head. "Don't push." After dinner, Thomas presented his gifts, books carefully selected for each girl's emerging interests. June's was a journal with a handwritten note inside, "For your thoughts and stories. I'd love to read them someday if you'd share them." For a moment, her composure cracked, a smile ghosting across her face. Later, as Thomas prepared to leave, June approached him. "Mom kept all the letters she wrote you," she said softly. "The ones she never sent. There's a box under her bed." Thomas knelt to her level. "Thank you for telling me." June studied him with Emily's thoughtful eyes. "She wanted us to know you, even when you never answered her first letters." The simple statement cut deeper than any accusation. "June," he whispered, "if I had known about you girls, nothing would have kept me away." Across town, Oliver Crane examined surveillance photos of Thomas with the triplets, a cold smile spreading across his face. "His precious new family," he murmured to Vanessa. "How convenient for us." "This is completely unnecessary," Margaret insisted, standing in the driveway of the elegant colonial home Thomas had purchased 3 doors down from hers. "The girls need stability," Thomas replied, inputting the security code. "I'm not trying to take them from you. I just want a place where they can feel at home with me too." Margaret sighed. "You can't solve everything by throwing money at it, Thomas." "I know." His voice softened. "But I've missed 7 years. Let me do what I can." Inside, contractors had worked miracles, transforming the house in just 1 week. Thomas led Margaret through rooms designed with the girls in mind. A library filled with books June might enjoy, an art studio with professional supplies for Bella, and a tech corner where Ava could explore her mathematical interests. "The girls will be here any minute," Thomas said nervously. "Do you think they'll like it?" Margaret's expression softened, seeing past the billionaire to the anxious father. "It's thoughtful. I'll give you that." The doorbell rang, his security. "Team arriving with the triplets from school." "Daddy!" Bella called, the first to use the title. The word hit Thomas like a physical force, stealing his breath. The girls explored the house with growing excitement, calling to each other about discoveries. Thomas watched, heart swelling, as they claimed spaces he'd created for them. "This is really all for us?" Ava asked suspiciously, ever the pragmatist. "All for you," Thomas confirmed. "For weekends or whenever you want to stay. If that's all right with your aunt." Margaret nodded grudgingly. "We'll try a weekend. See how it goes." Later, as the twins explored upstairs, Margaret pulled Thomas aside. "There's something you should know," she said quietly. "About Emily's last months." She handed him a thick folder of medical bills. "The treatments were experimental. Insurance wouldn't cover them." Thomas flipped through pages of devastating numbers. "How did she manage this?" "She didn't," Margaret admitted. "She's still in debt. They've been contacting me since." "I'll take care of everything," Thomas said immediately. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Pride runs in the family, Margaret replied with a sad smile. Emily worked herself to exhaustion trying to pay these. 3 jobs, Thomas, all while raising triplets alone. The weight of Emily's struggle, all while he'd been obliviously building his empire, crushed something in Thomas's chest. I should have known, he whispered. Should have found her. Margaret touched his arm, the first gesture of kinship between them. She made her choice to keep you in the dark. You have to accept that. Their moment was interrupted by June appearing silently beside them. We found the picture wall, she said, her serious eyes fixed on Thomas. All the photos of Mom. Thomas had gathered every image of Emily he could find, creating a memorial wall so the girls would know their mother's presence was honored in this new space. Is it okay? He asked, uncertain. June nodded, then held out a small, worn photograph. You can add this one too. It's from when she was happy. Thomas accepted it reverently, Emily laughing on a beach, her hair wild in the wind. He remembered taking it during their last vacation together. Thank you, he said, voice thick with emotion. This means a lot to me. June studied him, then did something unexpected. She leaned against his side in a half-hug before darting away to rejoin her. Sisters. Progress, Margaret murmured. Outside the house, Vanessa Monroe sat in her parked car, speaking into her phone. The security is extensive, she told Oliver, but I found our way in. The girls start at Westfield Academy next Monday. Perfect, Oliver replied. Their new daddy's about to learn what real loss feels like. Thomas adjusted his tie for the 3rd time, standing in Westfield Academy's crowded hallway. Parent-teacher night wasn't typically nerve-wracking for a man who regularly negotiated billion-dollar deals. Yet here he was, sweating like a rookie. You came, Margaret said, approaching with the girls in their matching school uniforms. I said, I would, Thomas replied, crouching to greet his daughters. Bella immediately hugged him while Ava offered a high five. June gave a small smile, progress from her usual reserve. Our classroom is this way, Ava announced, taking charge as usual. Ms. Wilson is nice but asks lots of questions. The corridors buzzed with families and teachers. Thomas felt curious, stares following them. The mysterious triplets and their suddenly appeared billionaire father were undoubtedly fodder for school gossip. Ms. Wilson, a warm-faced woman in her 40s, greeted them at her classroom door. Mr. Reed, so glad you could join us tonight, she said, shaking his hand. The girls have mentioned you've recently entered their lives. Thomas nodded, appreciating her directness. I'm trying to make up for lost time. Inside, Ms. Wilson shared insights about each girl. Ava excelled in mathematics and science but needed to work on patience. Bella showed remarkable artistic talent and empathy, though her health sometimes affected attendance. June, quietest of the 3, possessed extraordinary writing skills but struggled with participation. They're processing grief, Ms. Wilson said gently. But having both you and Ms. Margaret providing stability has already shown improvement. Thomas absorbed every word, hungry for knowledge about his daughters. When they reviewed their schoolwork, he marveled at June's poetic stories, Bella's detailed drawings, and Ava's complex problem-solving. I'm proud of you, he told them, meaning it more than any words he'd ever spoken. As they exited the classroom, a stylishly dressed couple blocked their path. So you're Thomas Reed, the woman said, voice carrying deliberately. Finally decided, your daughters were worth your time? Thomas stiffened as Margaret stepped protectively closer to the girls. I don't believe we've met, he replied evenly. Richard and Diana Westcott, the man supplied. Our son is in the girls' class. We've known them since preschool, where you were notably absent. That's enough, Margaret interjected, but Thomas gently touched her arm. You're right, he told the couple, aware the hallway had quieted, people straining to hear. I wasn't there, but I'm here now, and I intend to remain present for my daughters. How convenient, Diana sneered. Now that Emily's gone and can't contradict whatever story you're telling. Thomas felt rage building but kept his voice measured, conscious of the girls watching. My relationship with Emily and my daughters is private, he said firmly. But what matters is that Ava, Bella, and June know the truth. I didn't know about them, but now that I do, nothing will keep me from being their father. The triplets stared up at him, witnessing his public declaration. Besides, June suddenly spoke up, her quiet voice somehow commanding attention. Our mom always said our dad would have loved us if he'd known. And she was right. Thomas's heart nearly burst as June slipped her small hand into his. Well, Diana stammered, clearly not expecting the child's intervention. Excuse us, Thomas said, guiding his family past the couple. We have more teachers to meet. As they walked away, Ava tugged his sleeve. You didn't have to defend us. Yes, I did, Thomas replied. That's what fathers do. Later, as they walked to their cars, Margaret surprised him by saying, You handled that well. I'm learning, Thomas admitted. Daddy? Bella asked, the title still new on her lips. Can we have ice cream? Ms. Wilson said we're doing really good in school. Of course, Thomas smiled, treasuring the small victory of being needed. Across the parking lot, a woman with auburn hair snapped photos from a silver sedan, her face obscured by the camera. Target confirmed, Vanessa whispered into her phone. Operation still on schedule. Thomas was reviewing acquisition proposals when his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It's Bella. Aunt Margaret got me my own phone for emergencies. Can you come to my school concert? I'm singing a solo. He smiled at the careful spelling and proper punctuation, so like Bella to be meticulous. I wouldn't miss it for anything. When? Friday at 7. It's a big deal. Thomas immediately called his assistant to clear his calendar, canceling a crucial investors' dinner. Some things were non-negotiable now. Friday arrived with unexpected anxiety. Thomas consulted 3 different specialists about Bella's heart condition, ensuring her performance wouldn't strain her health. He arrived at the school auditorium an hour early, clutching 3 small gift bags. Margaret found him pacing in the lobby. They're backstage, she said. Nervous as can be, especially Bella. Is she all right? Her heart? The doctors cleared her, Margaret assured him. She's been practicing for weeks, wouldn't dream of missing this. When the triplets emerged from backstage, Thomas's breath caught. They wore identical blue dresses, hair styled differently. Ava's pulled back, Bella's curled, June's braided. They were breathtaking. You came early, Ava noted, eyebrows raised. I didn't want to miss anything, Thomas replied, offering their gifts, delicate silver bracelets, each with a charm representing their individual interests. June fingered her book charm quietly. Thank you. Bella hugged him fiercely. I'm so scared, Daddy. The title still melted something in his chest. You'll be magnificent, he promised, just like your mother. Her eyes widened. Mom sang too? Like an angel, Thomas confirmed. She never told you? The girls shook their heads. Thomas made a mental note to share more memories of Emily. As the auditorium filled, he noticed Oliver Crane slipping into a back row. Ice flooded his veins. What was his former partner doing at an elementary school concert? Before he could alert security, the program began. Thomas reluctantly took his seat, keeping Oliver in his peripheral vision. When Bella's solo was announced, Thomas leaned forward, heart pounding. She looked tiny on the large stage, but as she began singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow, her voice filled the space with surprising power and clarity. Thomas felt tears pricking his eyes. She had Emily's voice, that same ethereal quality that had first enchanted him 15 years ago. The audience sat transfixed as the small girl with the enormous voice sang of dreams and hope. When she finished, the silence held for a heartbeat before thunderous applause erupted. Thomas stood, clapping until his hands hurt, pride exploding in his chest. After the performance, families gathered in the reception hall. Thomas stood protectively near his daughters as they accepted compliments, watching for Oliver, who had disappeared. Mr. Reed called a classmate's mother approaching, with her husband. We wanted to congratulate Bella. She was extraordinary. Thank you, Thomas replied. surprised by their warmth after the hostility he'd encountered at parent-teacher night. The woman leaned closer. "And we owe you an apology. Diana Westcott spreads gossip about everyone. We shouldn't have listened." Ava, ever direct, grabbed Thomas's hand. "This is our dad," she announced proudly to another approaching family. "He missed some stuff, but he's here now." Thomas swallowed the lump in his throat as the simple declaration erased weeks of uncertainty. Later, driving home with the girls for their first weekend at his house, Thomas called his security team. Oliver Crane was at the school. "Find out why." "Already investigating, sir," his chief replied. "And sir, there's something else. A former employee of yours, Vanessa Monroe, was also present." Thomas's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel as he glanced in the rearview mirror at his daughters, chattering excitedly about the performance. Whatever game Oliver was playing, Thomas would protect his family at all costs. Thomas was midway through a board meeting when his phone vibrated. Seeing Margaret's name, he excused himself immediately. "She collapsed during gym class." Margaret's voice shook. "We're at Children's Memorial Hospital." Bella's heart. He didn't hear the rest, already running to the elevator. "I'm on my way." The 30-minute drive took 17 minutes. Thomas abandoned his car at the emergency entrance, sprinting through sliding doors to find Margaret pacing. The pediatric cardiac unit, June and Ava, huddled together on plastic chairs, faces pale with fear. "Where is she?" Thomas demanded. "Surgery," Margaret whispered. "Her valve. It's worse than they thought." Thomas felt the floor tilt beneath him. "Surgery. Heart valve. His little girl. The doctors?" he managed. "They're good, but—" Margaret's voice broke. "Thomas, our insurance doesn't cover specialists of this caliber. They're waiting for financial clearance before—" He was already on the phone. "This is Thomas Reed. My daughter Isabella Reed is in your cardiac unit. I want your best surgeon. Money is no object. Anything she needs, anything, is pre-approved." He provided his personal account details, then added, "And arranged transport for Dr. Helena Chen from Chicago Presbyterian. She's the leading pediatric cardiac specialist." A startled hospital administrator appeared minutes later. "Mr. Reed, we've expedited everything. Dr. Chen is on her way." Thomas nodded, then turned to his other daughters. Ava's face was streaked with tears while June sat unnaturally still, her small body rigid with terror. "Come here," he said gently, kneeling before them. They launched themselves into his arms with surprising force. He held them tightly, their small bodies trembling. "Bella's going to be okay," he promised. "The doctors will fix her heart." "Mom said that too," June whispered. But she was wrong. The simple statement nearly shattered him. These children had already lost so much. "I won't let anything happen to her," Thomas vowed, though he knew such promises were beyond his power to keep. The hours crawled by. Thomas paced, made calls, arranged for the best medical equipment to be delivered. When Dr. Chen arrived, he personally thanked her for coming. "Mr. Reed," she said kindly, "I've reviewed Bella's records. The condition is serious but treatable. I'll take good care of her." More waiting. Ava eventually fell asleep against Thomas's shoulder. June remained wide awake, watching the surgery doors with unwavering focus. "She's the sensitive one," Margaret murmured, accepting the coffee Thomas had ordered. They feel each other's pain somehow. 4 hours later, Dr. Chen emerged, looking tired but satisfied. "She's stabilized," she announced. "The procedure was successful. She'll need medication and monitoring, but with proper care she should lead a normal life." The relief was physical, like oxygen returning after too long underwater. "When can we see her?" Thomas asked. "She's in recovery now. One person can go." In briefly, Margaret nodded to Thomas. "You go. She was asking for you before surgery." In the recovery room, Bella looked impossibly small, surrounded by machines monitoring her precious heartbeat. Thomas approached cautiously, taking her tiny hand in his. "Daddy?" she whispered, eyes fluttering open. "I'm here, sweetheart," he said, voice thick with emotion. Did I miss the math test? She asked groggily. Thomas chuckled, tears spilling onto his cheeks. Don't worry about that now. Don't leave, okay? She murmured, drifting back to sleep. Never, he promised, knowing now he would rearrange the universe for these children. Outside the hospital, Oliver Crane watched Thomas through binoculars from his parked car. Perfect, he said into his phone. Reed Enterprises is in chaos with him absent. The board is calling an emergency meeting tomorrow, and now we know exactly which child he's most desperate to protect. These were under Mom's bed. Like I told you, June said, placing a weathered shoebox on Thomas's lap. I think you should read them. It was Bella's 4th day in the hospital. Thomas had barely left, working remotely, sleeping in uncomfortable chairs. The board was in uproar over his absence, but he couldn't bring himself to care. Are you sure? He asked June, who nodded solemnly. Mom would want you to know. Thomas waited until June rejoined Ava in the cafeteria with Margaret before opening the box. Inside lay dozens of letters, each addressed to him in Emily's distinctive handwriting, dated chronologically but never sent. With trembling fingers, he opened the earliest one. Thomas, I'm pregnant. 3 heartbeats on the ultrasound, can you believe it? Triplets. I've called your office 12 times. Your assistant says you're unavailable. Is that true? Or do you already know and have chosen silence as your answer? I still love you despite everything. Emily Thomas closed his eyes, pain slicing through him. He'd fired that assistant years later for unrelated dishonesty, never knowing she'd hidden something so momentous. He read another, dated months later. Thomas, the girls were born yesterday. They're perfect, so tiny but so strong. Ava came first, already commanding attention. Bella followed quietly. June arrived last, observing everything with your thoughtful eyes. I've named them myself, since you never responded to my letters. Sometimes I imagine you're just away on business, that you'll come home and be amazed by our daughters. I've stopped trying to reach you. Your silence says everything. Emily. Letter after letter documented their lives. First steps, first words, illnesses, triumphs. Emily's tone shifted from hurt to acceptance, but never hatred. She always wrote about him with respect, ensuring their daughters would have a positive image of their absent father. The final letter, dated just weeks before her death, broke him completely. Thomas. The doctors say I don't have much time. My biggest regret is leaving our girls. My second is never telling you about them. Pride and fear kept me silent after those initial rejections. I've instructed Margaret to send you this letter after I'm gone, along with photos of the girls. They're the best of both of us, Thomas. They deserve to know you, and you deserve to know them. I've told them you would have loved them if you'd known. Please make that true. I forgive you for the past. I hope one day you'll forgive me too. Emily Thomas wept openly, clutching the letter. Margaret had never sent it. She'd respected Emily's wishes but protected the girls from potential rejection. When he finally composed himself, Thomas found a small diary at the bottom of the box. Inside was Emily's plan to tell him about the triplets on their 10th birthday, believing by then he might be ready for fatherhood. He would never have the chance to thank her for preserving his image in their daughter's eyes, despite his unwitting abandonment. But he could honor her final wish. Tucking the most appropriate letters into his pocket, Thomas went to find the girls. They deserved to know how much their mother had loved them and him, despite everything. In Bella's hospital room, later Thomas read selected passages aloud. The girls listened raptly, connecting with their mother's words. She never said bad things about you, Ava remarked wonderingly. She was extraordinary, Thomas replied. Far better than I deserved. June, ever perceptive, studied him. But she was right about one thing. What's that? That you would have loved us if you'd known. Thomas gathered them close. With all my heart. Across town, Oliver Crane met with 3 Reed Enterprises board members in a private club. Thomas has abandoned ship, he told them, sliding across. Photos of Thomas at the hospital. Meanwhile, your stock is plummeting. He's chosen his secret family over your company. What exactly are you proposing? Asked Franklin, the most senior director. Oliver smiled coldly. A hostile takeover with my help. Then to twist the knife, we take what matters most to him. The children? Franklin looked disturbed. Just temporarily, Oliver assured him smoothly. We'll return them once he surrenders what's rightfully mine. That's not how Mom did it, Ava declared, watching Thomas struggle with the hair elastic. Show me again? He asked, surrendering the brush. 2 weeks after Bella's surgery, Thomas had converted his penthouse's home office into a girl's bedroom, complete with 3 distinct areas reflecting their personalities. Bella was finally cleared to leave the hospital, and the girls were spending their first full weekend at Dad's place, as they now called it. You're hopeless, Ava sighed dramatically, demonstrating the proper braid technique. Like this, see? You're a natural teacher, Thomas complimented, trying again on June's patient head. Not terrible, June offered when he finished examining her reflection. Thomas beamed as if awarded the Nobel Prize. In the kitchen, Bella supervised pancake preparations from a stool, still moving carefully but gaining strength daily. More blueberries, she instructed seriously. Mom always said fruit makes medicine taste better. These casual mentions of Emily no longer pierced Thomas with guilt. Instead, they felt like bridges connecting their past to this new present they were building. Your mother was very wise, he agreed, adding more blueberries. The morning unfolded in comfortable chaos. Syrup spilled, pajamas stained, laughter echoing through rooms that had known only silence for years. Thomas marveled at how completely his life had transformed. The board's frantic messages went unanswered. Weekend reports remained unread. Instead, he learned each daughter's rhythms. Ava's boundless energy, Bella's thoughtful creativity, June's quiet observation. They watched cartoons Thomas had never heard of, played board games where the girls ruthlessly crushed him, and explored the building's rooftop garden. By evening, Thomas had mastered ponytails, if not braids, and knew each girl's bedtime preferences. Ava needed her special pillow. Bella fell asleep to music. June required absolute darkness. As he tucked them in, June asked the question he'd been expecting. Are you going to leave us too? The room fell silent, her sisters equally invested in his answer. Thomas sat on the edge of the bed. No, never. I missed too much time already. But your company needs you, Ava pointed out pragmatically. We heard Margaret talking about it. The company will survive, Thomas replied. There are many people who can run meetings and sign papers, but there's only one person who can be your dad. Promise? Bella whispered. I promise, he said firmly. You 3 are my priority now. Always. After they fell asleep, Thomas stood in the doorway watching them, overwhelmed by love and fear in equal measure. His phone vibrated. Rachel, his assistant, calling for the 5th time that day. I know it's the weekend, she began apologetically. But the situation is critical. The board has called an emergency meeting Monday morning to discuss your leadership. Franklin's gathered significant support. They're claiming abandonment of duties. Let them meet, Thomas replied calmly. I'll be there. There's more. Rachel hesitated. Oliver Crane has been seen entering the building multiple times this week, and 3 board members have had private dinners with him. Ice formed in Thomas's stomach. Oliver wouldn't stop at taking his company. He wanted revenge, total destruction. Increase security for the girls, Thomas ordered. And tell Peterson I need those background checks on Vanessa Monroe expedited. After hanging up, Thomas returned to the doorway, watching his daughters sleep peacefully. In just months, they'd become his world. He would protect them at any cost. In the penthouse's secure home office, Thomas activated his computer. If the board wanted war, he'd be prepared. But first, he needed to understand exactly what Oliver was planning. The security footage from Reed Enterprises revealed Oliver and Vanessa in private conversation with Franklin in the executive parking garage. Though the audio was missing, their body language spoke of conspiracy. Thomas's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. She looks just like her mother when she sleeps. Bella, isn't it? The one with the weak heart. Shame if anything happened to her. Attached was a photo of Bella, taken through her bedroom window, tonight. Thomas hadn't slept. After receiving the threatening photo, he'd moved the girls to his bedroom, then spent the night establishing a security perimeter that would make the Pentagon envious. By dawn, his penthouse had new bulletproof glass, motion sensors, and 4 plainclothes guards stationed throughout the building. "Why is that man following us?" Ava whispered as Thomas walked them to the car for school Monday morning. "Protection," Thomas answered honestly. "Some people from my work are being difficult." "Because you're spending time with us instead," June deduced, too perceptive for her age. Thomas helped Bella carefully into her seat. "I'm handling it, don't worry." But worry shadowed his day as he returned to Reed Enterprises for the emergency board meeting. Franklin's face registered shock when Thomas calmly took his seat at the head of the table. "We didn't expect you to attend," Franklin remarked. "Clearly," Thomas replied, activating the presentation he'd prepared overnight. "Before you vote on my leadership, let's discuss Oliver Crane's recent activities." The boardroom fell silent as Thomas displayed surveillance photos of Oliver meeting board members, followed by financial records showing suspicious transactions. "Oliver isn't interested in saving this company," Thomas concluded. "He wants revenge. And 3 of you," his gaze locked with the guilty parties, "have been manipulated into helping him. Your personal problems have affected this company," Franklin countered weakly. "My personal problems are my daughters," Thomas stated firmly. 3 children who lost their mother and deserve their father's time. Yes, I've been absent. Priorities change. But Reed Enterprises hasn't suffered. Our Q3 projections are up 12%. Thomas distributed copies of his restructuring plan. "I'm appointing Rachel Chen as COO. She'll handle daily operations while I focus on strategic direction, allowing me to balance my responsibilities here with my family obligations." The meeting ended with grudging agreement to Thomas's terms. Outside, Rachel awaited. "The security team reports all clear with the girls," she assured him. "But there's something else. Vanessa Monroe liquidated her assets yesterday. She's planning something." That evening, Thomas picked up the girls from Margaret's, bringing them back to the newly fortified penthouse. The triplets sensed his tension. "Are the bad people coming for us?" Bella asked quietly during dinner. Thomas nearly dropped his fork. "What makes you ask that?" "We're not babies," Ava stated matter-of-factly. "We know something's wrong." "You keep checking your phone," June added. "And there are men watching our school." Thomas set aside his plate, considering how much to share. These perceptive children deserved some truth. "Someone who used to work with me is very angry," he explained carefully. "He might try to scare me by scaring you, but I won't let that happen." "Because of the money?" Bella asked. "Not exactly," Thomas sighed. "Sometimes adults do bad things because they're hurt or jealous. Like when Claire pulled my hair because I got a better grade," Ava reasoned. "Something like that." Thomas smiled, despite his worry. Later, as he tucked them in, all 3 insisting on sharing the guest room, each girl revealed vulnerabilities they'd kept hidden. "I pretend to be brave," Ava confessed. "But sometimes I'm scared of being the oldest. Mom always said I had to watch out for them." "That's my job now," Thomas assured her. "You just be 7. Bella fingered the scar on her chest. "Will my heart ever be normal?" "Your heart is perfect," Thomas said firmly. "Different but perfect." June, last as always, whispered, "I write letters to Mom every night. Is that weird?" "No, sweetheart," Thomas's voice caught. "Maybe sometime you could share one with me?" June nodded, hesitating before adding, "I've started writing to you too, just in case." "In case of what?" Thomas asked. "In case you go away too." The simple statement shattered him. Gathering all 3 in his arms, Thomas made a promise he intended to keep at any cost. "I'm not going anywhere, ever." As the girls drifted to sleep, Thomas's phone lit up with a text from Margaret. "Someone broke into my house. The girls' room was searched. Police are here." Thomas tightened his arms around his sleeping daughters. The enemy had made its first move. The kindergarten classroom buzzed with activity as children worked on art projects. Ms. Wilson noticed the classroom door open, revealing an elegant red-headed woman. "Can I help you?" she asked. "I'm Vanessa Monroe." The woman smiled warmly. "Thomas Reed's assistant. He asked me to pick up the girls for their cardiology appointment." Ms. Wilson frowned. "We weren't notified. Last-minute scheduling." Vanessa produced a business card with Reed Enterprises logo. "Dr. Chen only had this afternoon available. Here's Mr. Reed's authorization." The forged note looked authentic. Ms. Wilson hesitated but called the triplets. "Your father sent someone for your doctor's appointment," she explained. Ava immediately looked suspicious. "Dad didn't mention any appointment. He probably didn't want to worry you," Vanessa said smoothly. "Especially Bella, given her condition." Bella's eyes widened fearfully, and June grabbed her hand. "I'll call Mr. Reed to confirm." Ms. Wilson reached for her phone. "Of course," Vanessa smiled, subtly checking her watch. "Though we're running late and Dr. Chen is very strict about—" The school secretary appeared at the door. "Ms. Wilson, there's an emergency staff meeting right now. The superintendent is on the line." As the teacher hesitated, torn between responsibilities, Vanessa added, "I can show you the confirmation email from Mr. Reed." She displayed a convincing email on her phone. With the secretary urging her to hurry, Ms. Wilson reluctantly relented. "Girls, go with Ms. Monroe. I'll let your father know you've left with his assistant." "But—" Ava began to protest. "Now, Ava," Ms. Wilson said firmly, hurrying toward the office. Vanessa led the reluctant girls to a waiting black SUV. "This isn't Daddy's car," Bella noted as they approached. "Your father had to use a company vehicle today," Vanessa explained, opening the door. The moment they were inside, child locks engaged. A man turned from the driver's seat. Oliver Crane. "Hello, girls." He smiled coldly. "We're going on a little trip." Thomas was midway through a conference call when his phone lit up with a school notification. The triplets were signed out at 1:42 p.m. by Vanessa Monroe. His blood turned to ice. Vanessa had no authorization. He immediately triggered the security protocol, simultaneously dialing the school. "The girls were taken by a woman claiming to be your assistant," the panicked principal explained, "for a medical appointment with Dr. Chen." "I never sent anyone." Thomas's voice was deadly calm despite his racing heart. "Call the police now." Within minutes, his security team had dispatched units to every possible route from the school, while police issued an Amber Alert for the triplets. Thomas himself raced to the school, reviewing security footage that clearly showed Vanessa leading the girls to a black SUV. His phone rang, an unknown number. "Reed." His voice was steel. "Missing something?" Oliver's voice slithered through the line. "If you harm one hair on their heads—" Now, Oliver interrupted smoothly. "The children are perfectly safe, for now. Whether they remain that way depends entirely on you." "What do you want?" Thomas demanded, signaling his security chief to trace the call. "What's rightfully mine? Control of Reed Enterprises, full compensation for my intellectual property you stole, and public acknowledgement that your success was built on my innovations." "You'll have it all," Thomas said without hesitation. "Just return my daughters." Oliver chuckled, so eager. "But business transactions require proper documentation. You'll receive instructions for the transfer of controlling interest. Once completed, you'll get one child back. The rest will follow after additional requirements are met." "Let me speak to them," Thomas demanded. A moment later, Bella's trembling voice came through. "Daddy, I'm scared." "Bella, sweetheart, it's going to be okay, I promise. Are your sisters with you?" Yes," she whimpered. "The man says—" The phone was pulled away. "Touching," Oliver remarked. "Instructions will follow. Oh, and Thomas, don't involve the police further, or our arrangement changes dramatically." The line went dead. Thomas stood frozen for exactly 3 seconds before transforming into someone his business rivals would have failed to recognize. A father prepared to tear the world apart to save his children. "Track Vanessa Monroe's vehicle," he ordered his security team. "Check every property connected to Oliver or his associates. I want satellite imagery. Traffic cameras, everything. Sir, his chief approached carefully. The police are better equipped. The police follow rules. Thomas cut him off. I don't have that luxury. Not now. Margaret arrived, her face ashen. This is my fault. I should have kept them home after the break-in. No. Thomas gripped her shoulders. This is Oliver's doing, and he will regret it for whatever remains of his miserable life. His phone buzzed with a message. Photos of the frightened triplets holding today's newspaper, followed by a list of demands. Thomas's jaw tightened. Find them, he told his team. Whatever it costs, whatever it takes. Thomas's penthouse had transformed into a war room. Screens displayed maps and surveillance footage while security experts, former intelligence officers, and tech specialists worked. With military precision, 36 hours had passed since the kidnapping. We've located 3 properties connected to shell companies linked to Oliver, reported James, his head of security. Teams are surveilling each location. Thomas hadn't slept, surviving on coffee and raw determination. The police were officially investigating, but he knew Oliver's threat to harm the girls if law enforcement intervened directly was real. Mr. Reed called a young tech analyst. We've got movement at the lakeside property. Thermal imaging shows 3 small heat signatures and 2 adults. Thomas was reviewing the building schematics when his phone rang. Oliver again. Your paperwork seems delayed, Oliver remarked casually. Perhaps you need motivation? I've signed everything, Thomas replied, forcing calm into his voice. My lawyers are processing the transfers now. Expedite it, Oliver ordered. The little one with the heart condition seems stressed. Would be a shame if her medication went missing. Thomas's hand tightened around the phone. Let me speak to them. After a pause, Ava's voice came through stronger than he expected. Dad? Don't give him anything. He's... Her voice was cut off, replaced by Oliver's cold chuckle. Spirited, that one, just like her father. If anything happens to them, there won't be anywhere on Earth you can hide, Thomas warned. Threats don't become you, Thomas. Noon tomorrow. All paperwork finalized or consequences follow. The call ended. Thomas turned to his team. We move tonight. As darkness fell, Thomas reviewed the rescue plan a final time. The lakeside property showed the most activity and was most likely housing the girls. His team had identified multiple entry points and neutralized the security systems. Sir, you should remain here, James advised. We have trained personnel. My daughter's my operation. Thomas cut him off, checking the bulletproof vest beneath his black tactical gear. The approach was silent, boats carrying Thomas and his team across the dark lake to the property's blind side. Thermal imaging confirmed 5 heat signatures inside, 3 small clustered together, 2 larger moving separately. On my mark, Thomas whispered into his comm unit. Remember, children's safety is priority 1. The breach was swift and precise. 2 security specialists entered through the rear while Thomas and James took the front. Inside, they quickly neutralized a guard in the hallway. Not Oliver or Vanessa. Thomas followed the thermal readings to a locked door. James made quick work of the lock. And Thomas burst in, finding the triplets huddled together on a small bed. Daddy! Bella cried, launching herself into his arms. Thomas gathered all 3 close, his heart pounding with relief. Are you hurt? Did they harm you? We're okay, Ava assured him, her small face fierce. I kept watch. Where are they? Thomas asked, checking each girl for injuries. The red-haired lady left hours ago, June explained. The angry man is upstairs. Thomas handed the girls to James. Get them to safety now. Dad, no! Ava protested as James ushered them toward the exit. I'll be right behind you, Thomas promised, kissing each forehead quickly. Once the girls were safely outside, Thomas moved upstairs, cold fury guiding him. He found Oliver in a study, frantically gathering papers and a laptop. It's over, Oliver, Thomas stated flatly. Oliver spun around, eyes wild. You shouldn't be here, the paperwork isn't finalized. There won't be any paperwork, Thomas replied, advancing slowly. You've lost. Oliver lunged for a desk drawer, but Thomas was faster, tackling him to the ground. The struggle was brief but violent, years of hatred fueling Oliver's strength. A gun skittered across the floor. "You took everything from me," Oliver snarled, landing a punch that split Thomas's lip. "You did that yourself," Thomas countered, subduing him with calculated force. "And now you've made your last mistake. You threatened my children." Police sirens wailed in the distance as Thomas secured Oliver with zip ties. Outside, he found the girls waiting in a secure vehicle, 3 small faces pressed against the window. "You promised you'd be right behind us," Ava accused as he climbed in. "And here I am." Thomas gathered them close, breathing in their scent, memorizing the weight of them in his arms. June touched his bruised face gently. "Did you get the bad man?" "Yes," Thomas assured her. "He can't hurt you anymore." As the vehicle pulled away, Thomas watched police cars surround the property. Vanessa remained at large, but his primary concern was getting his daughters home. Bella curled against his chest, her small hand clutching his shirt. "I knew you'd find us, Daddy." For the first time in his life, Thomas had become the hero someone needed him to be. Thomas woke with a start, heart racing until he confirmed 3 small forms were still asleep in his bed. For the week since the rescue, the triplets refused to sleep separately, and Thomas couldn't blame them. He himself checked on them countless times each night. The initial medical examinations had shown no physical harm, but the psychological impact was evident. Bella had nightmares. Ava had become fiercely protective, barely letting her sisters out of sight. June had withdrawn into near silence, communicating through nods and whispers. Thomas had suspended all business operations, delegating everything to Rachel while he focused entirely on his daughters. The board, sobered by the kidnapping that had made national headlines, raised no objections. Dr. Lambert, the child psychologist Thomas had engaged, insisted that maintaining routines would help their recovery. So despite his instinct to keep them locked safely away, they were attempting a semblance of normalcy. "Pancakes or waffles?" he asked as the girls finally stirred awake. "Pancakes," Ava decided for everyone, her new habit of speaking for her sisters continuing. While cooking, Thomas reviewed security updates on his tablet. Oliver remained in custody, denied bail due to flight risk. Vanessa was still missing, despite an international manhunt. The lakeside property had revealed disturbing evidence of extensive planning: surveillance photos, schedules, even medical files detailing Bella's heart condition. "Is the bad lady still out there?" June's soft voice interrupted his thoughts. Thomas set aside the tablet, crouching to her level. "Yes, but she can't hurt you now. We have protection everywhere." Indeed, the penthouse security now rivaled the White House, and armed guards shadowed them constantly. "Will we ever go back to school?" Bella asked, picking at her pancakes. "When you're ready," Thomas promised. "Your teachers have been sending work home." "I don't want to go back," Ava declared. "It's not safe." Thomas's heart ached at how quickly their childhood innocence had been shattered. "Sometimes," he began carefully, "scary things happen that we can't control, but we can't let fear stop us from living." "That's what Mom said," June whispered, "when she got sick." Thomas nodded, pulling her close. "Your mother was very wise." Later that morning, Margaret visited, bringing comfort through her familiar presence. While the girls showed her the art projects they'd been working on as therapy, Thomas's phone rang with a secure call from his investigative team. "We've traced Vanessa's movements to a private airfield," his security chief reported. "She boarded a flight to the Caymans yesterday. Local authorities are moving in now." Relief washed through him. "Keep me updated." When he returned to the living room, he found Margaret wiping away tears. "They're drawing their memories," she explained softly. The triplets had created pictures of the kidnapping, but with a significant alteration. In each drawing, a superhero-like figure was swooping in to save them. The hero bore a striking resemblance to Thomas. "That's you, Daddy," Bella explained, pointing to her picture. "Coming to rescue us." Something profound shifted in Thomas's chest. He had spent his life building wealth and power, yet nothing had ever felt as significant as being the hero in his daughter's eyes. That evening, as Thomas tucked them into their respective beds, their first night attempting to sleep separately since the ordeal, June handed him a folded paper. "I wrote this for you," she whispered. It was one of her letters addressed to him. "Dear Dad, Mom used to say that love makes us brave. I didn't understand until you came for us. You were so brave. Now I'm trying to be brave too by sleeping in my own bed. When the bad people took us, I was scared you wouldn't find us, but Ava said you would, and she was right. You found us because you love us. Just like Mom said you would. Love makes us brave." June Thomas blinked back tears, kissing her forehead. "I love you more than anything in this world." Making his rounds, he reassured Bella about her nightmares and promised Ava he'd leave all. The doors open. In the quiet of his study afterwards, Thomas made two decisions. First, he would restructure Reed Enterprises to require minimal involvement, prioritizing time with his daughters. Second, he would establish a foundation in Emily's name, supporting single parents and children with medical needs. His empire had once been everything. Now it was simply a resource to protect what truly mattered. His phone pinged with a message from his security team. Vanessa Monroe in custody. All threats neutralized. Thomas released a breath he'd been holding for days. They were safe. They could begin to heal. Down the hall, a small cry from Bella's room sent him hurrying to her side. There were still nightmares to soothe and trust to rebuild, but they would do it together. As a family. 6 months had passed since the kidnapping. Autumn leaves crunched beneath Thomas's shoes as he walked through Greenwood Cemetery, a small hand tucked in each of his, with Ava leading the way a few steps ahead. Today marked 1 year since he'd first discovered his daughters at this very spot. 1 year that had transformed him from a lonely billionaire to something infinitely more valuable, a father. "This way," Ava called, confidently navigating the path to Emily's grave. They found the headstone adorned with fresh flowers Margaret had visited earlier. Thomas helped the girls arrange their handmade cards and drawings around the marble marker. "Dow, you think Mom can see these?" Bella asked, carefully placing her artwork. "Absolutely," Thomas assured her, his throat tightening. So much had changed. Oliver awaited trial, his empire dismantled. Vanessa had taken a plea deal, revealing Oliver's obsessive vendetta against Thomas. Reed Enterprises now operated under Rachel's capable leadership, with Thomas serving as chairman but working primarily from home. Most importantly, the triplets were healing. They'd returned to school with enhanced security. Their nightmares had grown less frequent. They were in many ways ordinary 7-year-old girls again, albeit with extraordinary courage. "I brought something special," Thomas said, removing a document from his coat pocket. "I wanted your mother to witness this moment." The girls gathered around as he knelt between them. "These are adoption papers," he explained gently. "They make official what we already know in our hearts, that you're my daughters in every way that matters. The judge signed them yesterday." "But we were already yours," Ava stated pragmatically. "Yes," Thomas smiled. "But now it's official. No one can ever question it or take you away." "We're really Reeds now?" June asked, her voice stronger these days. "You've always been Reeds," Thomas assured her. "This just puts it on paper." Bella traced the embossed seal with her finger. "Mom would be happy." "I think so too," Thomas agreed. They stood in comfortable silence, the autumn breeze rustling the trees. Thomas remembered standing in this same spot a year ago, alone and empty, not knowing his life was about to change forever. "I have something for each of you," he said, reaching into his pocket. He'd had 3 lockets crafted, each white gold, with a unique design reflecting their personalities. Inside each was a tiny photo of Emily on one side, and all 3 girls with Thomas on the other. "So we always remember we're connected," he explained, helping fasten them around their necks, "even when we're apart." "Like at school?" Bella clarified, already treasuring her heart-shaped locket. "Exactly," Thomas nodded. "And someday, when you're grown with lives of your own, these will remind you that you're always part of something bigger." June, ever the writer, had prepared something too. From her pocket came a carefully folded paper which she read in her clear voice. "Dear Mom, it's been 1 year since Dad found us. You were right about him. He's not perfect, but he tries really hard. Sometimes he burns pancakes and can't braid hair right, but he always comes when we call. He keeps his promises. He's teaching us to be brave, just like you did. We miss you every day, but we're okay. Now love makes us a family. Love, June, Ava, and Bella. Thomas couldn't hold back tears as he gathered them in his arms. Thank you, he whispered. As they walked back through the cemetery, the girls ran ahead, playing a game of their own invention. Thomas watched them, marveling at their resilience. His phone buzzed, Rachel with a business emergency requiring his input. For a moment he considered answering, then silenced the device. The Empire would wait. Dad, come on, Ava called impatiently. We're getting ice cream, remember? I remember. Thomas smiled, quickening his pace to catch up with his daughters. Later, as they drove home to the house they now shared with Margaret, combining their families into something new and wonderful, Thomas caught each of their eyes in the rearview mirror. I love you, girls, he said simply. 3 voices replied in unison. Love you too, Dad. And in that moment, Thomas Reed, once defined by wealth and power, was finally rich in the only way that truly mattered.